excitatory neurotransmitters, common excitatory neurotransmitters are acetylcholine, glutamate, norepinephrine, epinephrine. And the common example of inhibitory neurotransmitter are the GABA and the glycine. Now you need to note that some neurotransmitter, they can be either excitatory or inhibitory depending on the type of the receptor that is available on the postsynaptic neuron itself. So what happened in the excitatory neurotransmitter is that it actually opens the cation channels, for example the sodium channels, so that the sodium goes in, and when the sodium goes in, the membrane potential of the postsynaptic neuron becomes less negative, and once it reaches negative 55, an action potential will fire. Whereas for inhibitory neurotransmitter, rather than opening the cation channels, it open the anion channels, for example the chloride channels. Therefore, when the chloride influx into the postsynaptic neuron, then the membrane potential becomes more negative, and therefore it is unlikely to produce action potential. Another way to classify the neurotransmitter is depending on the chemical structure of the neurotransmitter itself. Now, for example, you have the A, B, C, and N. A for amino acid, B for biogenic amines, and 3 for choline ester, and finally the neuropeptide. So I'll go like A, B, C, and N. So amino acids is usually the one that starts with the letter G, because that's the way I remember it: GABA, glutamate, and glycine. Whereas the amines is those that biogenic amines is those that ends with -ine or -rine. Whereas choline ester, the classic example is the acetylcholine. Now, when you're learning physiology afterwards and pharmacology afterwards, you'll be expecting to come across acetylcholine a lot, okay? And the final category is the neuropeptide. So these are the other neurotransmitters that are not classified as the 3 above. Now let's have a look at this song that is produced by the medical students in one of the IPT.
Neurotransmitter is a chemical substance that carries nerve impulses from a neuron to another neuron through the synapses. There can be so many types of neurotransmitters: excitatory, inhibitory, and based on their structures. Amines, amino acids, and acetylcholine. It's made up of choline and coenzyme A. Neurotransmitter is a chemical substance that carries nerve impulses from a neuron to another neuron through the synapses. Synthesized in a neuronal cell and stored in vesicles. Upon sufficient stimulus, it's released into synaptic cleft. Muscarinic, nicotinic are receptors for acetylcholine. Leads to excitation in internal organs and skeletal muscles. Dopamine and serotonin are inhibitors, and serotonin makes you happy, making you browse your phone for hours. That's dopamine. Adrenaline and noradrenaline, they act as both excitation and inhibition. That's their job. With the fight or flight response, they help you cope up with the stress. Carbon nitric oxide, histamine, and substance P are some of the rest. Neurotransmitter is a chemical substance that carries nerve impulses from a neuron to another neuron through the synapses. Synthesized in a neuronal cell and stored in vesicles. Upon sufficient stimulus, it's released into synaptic cleft.
Right. So what do you think happens to the neurotransmitters after it has completed its job of transmitting the information to the postsynaptic neuron. So there are three fates of this neurotransmitter. We go with the 3R. The first, it rots, okay, or the a more suitable term is the degradation by specific enzyme. Classical example of this is acetylcholine is degraded by the acetylcholinesterase. So acetylcholine is made of two components, which is the acetyl and the choline. So when it is degraded, it forms the acetyl and the choline, the acetate and the choline. And the second fate is to being reuptake or recycled into the presynaptic neurons. For if we continue with the acetylcholine, okay, so what happens after it is being degraded? This choline will be reuptake into the presynaptic neuron by this, together with sodium, by this co-transporter known as the sodium choline co-transporter. And number 3, it is reabsorbed into the circulation.